Welcome to the Heroes of Reality podcast, a podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Welcome, young adventurers. Dylan here. And on today's podcast, I have Sam Watts. He's creating immersive experiences and partnerships for enterprise and entertainment over at Make Real. He's got decades of experience. You might have seen him as VR Sam Online Verified, but he's got decades of experience of building entertainment experiences that are also educational. And we're going to go diving deep about a couple of the flagship titles, the titles that came out through Oculus. We're going to be talking about enterprise work. We're talking about soft skills and where the industry is going and all that fun stuff. And so without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Sam Watts. Hey, brother.
Hey, Dylan. How's it going?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's a sunny afternoon. I can't complain. Lockdown's easing. We're coming to the end of this current dilemma. So hopefully it'll be nice and easy moving into summer.
Congratulations. Very happy to hear that. Yes, it's early morning for us over here on the West Coast, and also sunny. What you have right now with the pandemic and stuff, well, let's first talk about so how's it going over there right now? And then how's it been for the world of VR and you?
I don't think, well, it depends who you ask. I think if you ask our government, they'll say that they've handled the situation very well. Mm-hmm. I think the average person who, a year later, since we first went into lockdown in March 2020, we're still pretty much here, still working from home, still working remote. Life has changed completely, and we have like the highest death toll in Europe. So I wouldn't say it's been going particularly well, but personally for us, I love working at home. I love working remote. We've switched the whole studio to working remote. We were very much, people in the studio beforehand, physically present, and within a couple of weeks, we're all up and running, and everything seems fine, and everyone majoritively is preferring that. But now, we're looking like most people. How do we work in the new normal? Is it a mix of flexi? Do some people stay at home? Some people want to go back to the studio. Mm-hmm. Bit of both. But in terms of the immersive tech and VR, a lot of our clients, and we're seeing a lot of people are embracing a technology and using it in new ways beyond just that single use case that they had before. They're very much embracing it as a tool to help them work more efficiently.
Nice. Yeah. It's kind of that silver lining thing going on with the whole COVID pandemic hit. Is terrible for the global economy, everything that's going on, but great for virtual reality. And so it's like, it's that like balance of the two. And the weird thing was also because we were a studio as well, and we had a shift to go online and all remotes and things. What hiccups did you see making that transition going into the remote space? And what were some of the hidden benefits that you've seen now that you've gone fully remote?
I think initially it was slightly easier in a lot of ways because a lot of our development was already done in the cloud. It was already done remotely. We didn't have to rely upon that much hardware in the studio. Mm-hmm. All of our files, all of our backups and everything, they were external anyway. So it was just a case of accessing those from home rather than from the studio. Mm-hmm. The obvious first issue is not everyone has really good home broadband. So there was a lot of people rapidly upgrading their broadband to have faster speeds to cope with download and uploads, huge builds and whatnot. Mm. Some systems we use, you need whitelisted IPs, so we can't necessarily do that from home. So we still need to, need to VPN into the office and then pretend you're coming from the office to get to those systems. But ultimately, it's more about, I'm very fortunate because I don't have kids. I live in a countryside. I've got a spare room. I can turn it into an office. I've got a garden. It's all very nice and very pleasant for me. But, there are people in the studio who are parents and they have to juggle homeschooling, normal life, partners working, trying to, small spaces, people living on their own. It's not been an easy ride for everyone. But I think overall, we've probably seen people are more productive just because, developers typically, they don't like being bothered because they want to just get on and develop. So when they're not in the studio, they can just work and get their heads down rather than being interrupted every 10 minutes to go to a meeting or, being asked about something, or any kind of, background noise and distractions. So it's great for them. But then we still have to find out ways of how do we ensure that you have that connection between the team. It's not all just about work, right? It's about those relationships and fostering the culture and a nice place to work still. So we've been doing a lot of social activities remotely together to make sure that we still have those water cooler moments or, catch-ups in the morning when you're making a cup of coffee or whatever.
So yeah, so talk to me a little bit more about that on like these social, water cooler moments that you're creating, because you're right. There's a natural byproduct that happens when you're together, like people are together,
Yeah.
and you just shoot the shit, as it were. What are you doing now to actively foster that type of connection?
We've tried out a variety of things. First and foremost, it's all voluntary. It's because some people, they're like, no, I'm just going to do my work, and then I need that clear distinction, between my work area and my home area, and etc. But we've done everything pretty much like most companies probably. We've done, virtual Zoom pub quizzes, escape rooms, VR social VR meetups, multiplayer gaming. I mean, we make our own multiplayer games, so we've been playing our own game quite a lot. It's in development for a new platform, which I can't quite announce yet, but we've been doing a lot of testing with beers on Fridays, but then it doesn't all have to be digital because we spend a lot of extra time looking at screens, and sometimes you just want to not be involved in a screen. So we've been doing food home care packs, giving people vouchers to go shopping, to buy there's a place here in the UK where all the street food diner sort of like caravans have come together, and you can buy their restaurant and their meal kits. And we've sort of been doing, sort of cooking together on a Friday, or even just, giving them vouchers to get nice food to spend some quality time with their family or their partner or their cats or whoever, away from work. So sort of like a anti-social event, as it were.
Yeah, that's great. What we call those food truck roundups here, where you get a bunch of them together and they kind of serve the people and stuff. But it's funny because that is super important. It's odd because we generally want to just get on with our work, but then there's like this degradation of human connection that eats away slowly. It's like not working. It's like not working out. It's like, oh, you can get away with it for a little bit of time, but then all of a sudden you look back and you realize, oh wow, like you're deep in the hole. So that's why I'm very, very curious about how to keep it going. And I agree with you. Someone that also builds multiplayer gaming who plays it with the teams and people, like you spend a lot of time in that space and it's fun. But then after a while, you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm full on this thing. Let's go do something else, like like a cooking class or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because as developers and evangelists of VR and trying to encourage adoption, then obviously we're going to encourage people who don't use it every single day or don't have devices, go out, and this is a way to connect during the pandemic. But as developers, because we're using it every day and building for it all the time, sometimes going into VR chat or Altspace or whichever social VR app to do something not work related, it's like, oh, I've spent all day in VR. I don't necessarily want to use it again in my free time. I just need to go for a walk and look at a long distance as opposed to something that's sort of 2 foot away.
100%. What's your favorite something that you guys haven't made? What's your favorite social VR experience?
We generally use Altspace most, I think, just because it has a lot of features in terms of creating your own spaces, but also there's a huge set of events always running. And obviously, as VR developers, our usual way of getting people into VR is doing a face-to-face event and putting headsets on people. So going to a space where you can create and bring assets from your content in is one way of doing that. But I think it's just the audio is really good and the stability is really good. And I think in terms of our general sort of enterprise client side, they're more interested in the sort of the more enterprise friendly avatars, etc. And we sort of worry about, if they go wandering too far in like VR chat and they come across all the furries and anime schoolgirls, etc. Their enterprise sort of IT policies will be, flagging pretty rapidly. So I know obviously they all have their own private spaces you can go straight into, but we just have to be very careful about what we introduce our clients to, because it's our recommendation. But yeah, I mean, I wrote a blog post though at the start, like March 2020, about applications that were enabling remote work and remote collaboration and remote meetings, and there was already 46 different applications then, and that was at the beginning of the lockdown. So it's quite a gold rush, and there's a lot to choose from at the moment, depending upon what your particular use case is.
Yeah. What about talking about your journey? You've been evangelizing VR for a number of years. What was your first mind blown, holy crap moment? VR is the thing. Like what got you into this whole space?
Well, I mean, that was in the 90s with the virtuality machine. There's a place in London called Trocadero Centre that used to have a few virtuality machines, and you go and play Dactyl Nightmare and pay £5 or whatever, and you have this very low resolution, poor computer quality graphics at the time, and you'd come away mostly with a headache because the technology was so old and not particularly high spec. But that was my first experience, and that was like, holy shit, this is going to be something when it's usable for a period of time, and doesn't require this massive booth and huge, great heavy helmet. And at the time, many thousands worth of kit. And it was when I joined Make Real in 2013, and the Oculus Rift DK1 Kickstarter backer rewards arrived, and it was suddenly like, wow, okay, we'd done some work already with sort of military grade equipment, but that was much lower resolution, much higher latency, much smaller field of view, required really expensive PCs to run it, and then suddenly you had this $300 device that ran Unity out of the box off a relatively cheap PC. In comparison, it's just like, wow, this is going to be great, right? But like most people, I went into that Tuscany demo and I moved around with the Xbox gamepad.
I remember that,
and it was in 3DoF, and I felt pretty ill for like a good number of hours after that, and I was just like, it's awesome, but my God, what do we need to do to make that comfortable for everyone?
I'm curious how many people got to the top of that balcony and threw up. That's what I want to know. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
The Tuscany scene, for anybody that doesn't remember, like you put on the DK, you get the DK1 box, this nice hard plastic shelled box. You open up the DK1, you put it on, you put in all the sensors, you plug into the computer. You have to like get it all like just perfect. But then you'd go inside Tuscany. It was beautiful. I remember there was some motions. I think there were some particle effects. There were some things happening in there that kind of gave you a sense that you were really there. And to today's standards, it's crap. It's absolute crap. But back then, it was amazing. And it's like right now, I'm so envious of like the 12-year-old kids that get the Oculus box at their house for Christmas. Yeah. And they're like, yes. And they don't have to deal with the decades of, it's coming. I swear VR is almost here. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see how far we've come in the time given. With how's your
It's been
opinion?
8 years,
8 years, only 8. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
How has your opinions changed about VR? Or like as the technology's gotten better, where has your mind shifted to in what's possible for the world of VR?
Well, I mean, we've always adopted a very sort of slowly, sort of gently approach, and tried not to get too carried away with the early sort of analyst predictions of we're going to be billionaires, and we're going to have 5 yachts, and it's going to be a gold rush within months, etc., etc. And we saw in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, it was like the year of VR. And then at the end of each year, it was like, oh, VR dead. And it wasn't the year of VR. We've always maintained a very sort of stoic, sensible approach, and have just been consistently there, working in the background, not getting carried away, just, pushing what can be done with that current technology, but at the same time in how we evangelize and how we educate our clients and people who want to get into VR is, better things will always come, and we're still a few years away from those better things, but it's it's an iterative process. So we've just worked and built with that, going from DK1 to DK2, having the first positional tracking, being able to move around a bit in your seat, and a lot of the motion sickness went away straight away with that.
Yeah.
But our first demo of the first thing we built for VR was what became Radial G, which ended up being a day one launch title for Oculus Rift in 2016. But that started life in a DK1, and on paper and in videos, people were like, "How is that not a vomit comet?" Because it was essentially an arcade sci-fi roller coaster that you control.
Mm-hmm.
But we learned a lot and we did a lot of things to that to make it super comfortable. And after having demoed it to good many thousand people over the years, we're tracking, less than 1% of people who had to stop within 20 seconds and take it off. But
that's great.
So
the way that I would describe it for people that haven't seen Radial G, it's like you're on a racetrack that that you're magnetically attracted to, and it's like a large tube. So you could on this the vehicle you're in, you can kind of wrap around this racetrack
tube.
Race tube. You're right, race tube. Yeah. And it's a race tube, and it does look like you could get sick from it, but I imagine there's a lot of things working for you because you're enclosed inside a space, and so that kind of gives you some grounding. You can pretty much move in and forth. It's not like it's unpredictable. I remember we made one of the first things as a prototype years ago was a road rash type of game where you're on motorcycles, and if you hit someone, they'd go flying and they'd tumble end over end. And it was super funny. And then but see, you being experienced in VR, what you would feel if happens if all of a sudden you just uncontrollably spun over 3 axes repeatedly. And so it was a great demo, but then after the demo and the results, we're like, yeah, this can't go out anywhere because no one's going to appreciate this. So so you have some titles. One of the titles was Radial G. The other one, could you describe it? You described it a bit, kind of like a Mario Party in VR. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So our second title was a complete divergence from Radial G. Radial G was very fast, very intense, very moody, very adrenaline fueled, and we learned a lot about comfort. But with Loco Dojo, we wanted to experience and learn more about the touch controllers, because they hadn't come out, and we had dev kits, and we wanted to explore the limitations and what we could do with tracked input, and also what we could do with multiplayer, because one of the common complaints about VR has always been that it's isolatory, it's a single player experience, you're shut off from the world, etc., etc. But as we've seen with the rise of social VR, and VR in general, it's what's going on in the headset, and because you're shut away from the real world doesn't mean you're shut away from the rest of the world. And what then, after that sort of early toy box demo from Oculus, where you're passing stuff around, and some of the early Vive demos, it was like, right, what can we do that is simple to pick up, simple to learn, difficult to master, but at the same time showcases all these different kind of interactions and things you can do with the controllers, and at the same time is stupid British fun. So
the technical term.
It's an official thing over here. You can get like a certification and everything. So we had this sort of we have a thing called Punt of the Week, and basically a punt is like a random, sort of don't ask, don't get, a random, throw it out there, see if it sticks, try your luck kind of thing. And we really wanted Brian Blessed. Well, we really wanted Danny DeVito to voice. No, not Danny DeVito. He's still alive. What's his name? Other short actor, British, Bob Hoskins, but he's dead. To be the voice of our Grand Sensei. But there's another great British actor called Brian Blessed, who nobody really ever knows who he is unless you're over a certain age and you remember the cult sci-fi sort of campy classic Flash Gordon. He was King of the Wingmen, but he's like very loud, very boisterous, very British. He also played King of the Gungans in Phantom Menace, but we don't really talk about Phantom Menace.
Ignore those series.
Yeah. So we emailed his agent, like on the off chance that he would be available and affordable to do the VO for us, and they came back with a price that we could accept. And lo and behold, he became our Grand Sensei, and he equally congratulates and chastises you in the game depending upon how well you do, and brings like a real character. Wow. But obviously the real purpose of the game is to whack bats with sausages, and milk pigs and throw biscuits and ride pigs, and shoot snakes to catch burgers and other things that make completely logical sense when you say them out loud.
Yeah, that totally. One of my favorite things about trying to describe a game that's super fun to people is trying to describe it and it doesn't sound fun at all. It sounds like a weird thing, right? And then you're like, it's like if you try to describe Pac-Man to a kid who's never played it. It's like, no, right. Like you go around, you eat these things, and then these ghosts chase you, and then like you get a pill. It's just trying to describe it doesn't do it any type of justice.
But that's VR in a whole nutshell, right? You can describe VR till you're blue in the face, or you can stick a headset on someone and they get it in 10 seconds.
Yeah, and that's what I usually describe to people as a bandwidth issue. Is that like in order for me to communicate to you, right? We have a certain amount of bandwidth that's being communicated. Now I take over your vision and your auditory and all those other senses. The bandwidth widens way up, and you can actually experience what it is. Versus me try to sell you why. Oh my God, whacking sausages with a bat is super fun.
Yeah, but we've got. I was just updating it today, actually, in preparation for something else coming this year. There's over 100 videos on YouTube of people doing let's play videos of the game. And if I'm ever feeling slightly blue, then I just watch a random video of somebody playing the game, because they're just having so much fun and they're just so happy and they're just crying with laughter whilst they're doing these stupid things that we designed, that it just makes you feel really good that you've put this thing out there that people really enjoy playing.
Yeah, man. There is an absolute joy in giving the gift of people having a good time with what you've made. So like whatever experience that thing is, and you can see them playing and giggling and all that stuff, and it makes it worth it. How has I want to shift the conversation from the social VR that you're creating, and you're using these things as experimental features to understand and build things out for the enterprise space, because that's what you're doing here. You expect what the dirty secret of all enterprise training applications is that you leverage all of the games and the insights and the things that work in the entertainment space, and you bring them over to the enterprise space because you want to make something that people have to do fun and entertaining and compelling and engaging in a way that they will actually go through it. So could talk to me a little bit about the lessons and insights that you made from Local Dojo and the multiplayer code base and things you discovered, and how you transitioned that into the enterprise space.
Well, I mean, I describe it as like a sort of dual cyclic system. So, we will build these little prototypes, these little interaction explorations in terms of what can we do as a particular technology or as a particular feature, make it into something fun to play. It gives us stuff that we can talk about publicly and show publicly as well, raising awareness of the profile. That then gets attention from hardware manufacturers, who will then give us access to dev kits and prototypes and stuff, which we can then take those prototypes and incorporate into that sort of what's coming down the line. And then we work with our clients and enterprise who want to be innovative and want to be involved in the next thing. And then, that's where we then get the sort of agency sort of profitable work from. But then that feeds back into the next prototype and our own internal investment of how we build out that next thing. As I say, Radial G taught us a lot about how to make something in VR super comfortable beyond just the technical performance of meeting certain frame rates and whatnot. Loco Dojo taught us a lot about all these different kind of interaction types, plus what is easy for somebody who's never used a gamepad in a sort of enterprise experience, who's 30, 40, 50 years old maybe, is suddenly gone to go and do a training program, and they're not being presented with a PowerPoint or a group discussion. They're now being asked to put on a headset. What can we do to reduce the faff and the barriers to entry, the prickly pain points for the facilitators, but also the users. And how can we just make it they can put the headset on, they've got their acclimatization period. Okay, it's like, oh, okay, this is VR, I understand. But then it's like, oh, I've got hands, what do I do? Oh, okay, I can press a button and suddenly I've got a screwdriver, or a wrench, or I'm selecting a menu and a dialogue option. It all just feeds into making it. There's the old design adage, which is KISS, which is keep it super simple, or keep it simple stupid. And VR is very much the same. When you're still looking at probably 6 or 7 out of 10 users these days are going to be first-time users, and your experience is going to be their first experience of VR. VR seems to be this really binary thing where people put the headset on, and depending upon that experience, they either love it or hate it. And they can't seem to disconnect that experience from the technology. So if it's a bad experience, they'll just write off the technology. It's like watching TV. If you've never seen TV before and you watch a TV show, and you've never seen a TV show before, if the first TV show you see is, NASCAR, and you don't like racing, you're going to be like, oh, you wouldn't be like, oh, TV's rubbish. It's like, is there something else to try? Is there something else to watch? What else can TV do? But a lot of people are just like, no, didn't like it. Made me feel sick. Made me feel funny. It was overwhelming, or wasn't interesting.
Yeah,
it's the same in the training space as well. A lot of people struggle to, because we don't necessarily have a demo or a prototype or an example of every single real world interaction or training scenario available, because we're asking people to pay us essentially to make them, and some people, they can understand, all right, this example that you're showing me, I can understand how elements of this could correlate and translate to something that I would like to build, whereas other people just don't get it at all, and they just can't sort of stretch their imagination to see how that would work in a 4D space.
Yeah, I've also noticed this. Generally, the older and the more expensive the suit, the less like a fool they want to look like, and the less likely they are to put on the headset with anybody around.
Yeah, I mean, obviously devices are getting smaller and lighter. I always describe VR as being like a pan of milk. It's not just one thing boiling up. It's like all these different things that are heating up individually, and it's all going to come to a certain temperature at the same time, and then it will flow over and boil over. And it's like things like 5G or 6G, things that are going to enable wider bandwidth, things that are going to enable remote processing, streaming, better optics, things that are going to enable lighter headsets, pass through, all these various aspects that will reduce it down to a pair of glasses at some point that will be beneficial. So you haven't just got this big goofy black box on your face. But we, at the same time, a lot of people have tried VR, and they've tried, a Google Cardboard and a roller coaster simulator, or a roller coaster video, and it made me feel funny. I don't like VR. And then you've got to try and get them into a 6DoF thing and go, well, that wasn't really VR. Let's, try the full fat thing, and then tell me if you don't like it.
Man, I could tell you how many times I've been faced with that. I'm like, you want to try it? Like, no, I've already tried it. I don't like it. I go, what did you try? They're like, oh, it was on a phone. It was a cardboard. It was a roller coaster. That is almost the number one thing that I hear from people of why they don't like VR is they've tried out the cardboard headset and it made them sick. And we know why. And so it's because you're locked in a 3DoF position and you're moving your head in these weird positions, and you don't have that syncing up because the 6DoF isn't tracking your whole thing. So you're having those, the proprioception in your ear and everything. You're losing where you're located, and so your body's like, you must be sick. And so
but at the same time, it's like, have you been on a roller coaster in the real world? How did that make you feel?
That is true. I don't like the scary movie. It scared me. You're like, well, okay. So try a different movie.
It's a very patient game in terms of encouraging people to try it out. I mean, incidentally, I've demoed, DK1, DK2, CV1, Vive, a variety of Gear VRs, Goes, and other products that aren't Oculus. I've generally found, and it's a shame because, obviously Quest 2 is now white. PSVR is white. Daydream was available in different colors. The Go was gray. But I generally found people were more willing to put a headset on if it wasn't just this big nerdy black techie box thing. If it came in, they all headsets need to come in a multitude of colors.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does feel like they're shifting towards like, how do we look more like Apple? How do we make things look more white? Because that's what Apple's like. Their color is. They have that, and then like an array of like bright colors. And I do think that you're right. Big, scary black thing you put on your face versus like slim, sleek, like the earpods you have in right now. They're slick. They're sleek. They look, and it's also familiar for people. They're like, oh, it's okay. It's. I know this. It must be safe. So. Let me ask you in terms of the enterprise training areas, what do you think are some of the biggest and most profound use cases for using VR for the enterprise sector?
I think a number of years in now, what we term hard skills have been done to death, and they're like really obvious use cases for VR, because you can create a virtual environment that creates a sense of danger, or it would be expensive to put someone in there in the real world, or you can create scenarios that are real edge cases that you can't just record in a video in the real world because they don't happen, or you've got to be in the right time at the right place, and we've seen however many pushback airplane VR training experiences, and construction sites, and a multitude of oil and gas rig sort of fire safety training. But the biggest growth of the area for us, and the most interesting area, is all the soft skills, as in the opposite of the hard, but more interpersonal skills. And I hate to use that. I hate to use the term empathy machine, but it does really work within the soft skills area, where using if you read the research from like Mel Slater at University of Barcelona, embodiment and avatar agency, swapping positions and playing back recording of your behavior, being in somebody else's shoes. But soft skills training is typically pretty bad in using traditional methods. People don't take it seriously. You're asking people to role play scenarios they don't really have experience of. If they've got actors in, actors' performance changes over the day. It's not consistent. There's no real subjective feedback. Whereas with VR, we can change all of that, because we can measure exactly what they're doing and where they're looking, and wearables we can add, record extra biometrics, etc. And when they say, "Oh yeah, I felt fine in this," and go, "Well, actually, your heart rate was through the roof and you weren't making eye contact," or something like that. There's actual quantitative data that we can give back to the learners. But at the same time, you can take a headset away and you can go and do your practice and your training with whatever the scenario is, with however many 3D human avatars is set up. And you don't have to worry about embarrassment or looking like a doofus with your work colleagues or in a group session. So yeah, I mean, for us, our clients, especially in finance, are really picking up on this in terms of how they can incorporate VR for soft skills training to make their teams not just be more effective in terms of selling and communication and stuff that benefits the business, but also be better people by being more aware of the outcomes of their actions and how they treat their colleagues.
Have you seen, because with the soft skills, I mean, have you seen like an effectiveness in the systems? Like, how long does it take for them to be effective going through this? How many what would you call the dose? How many times do they go through it? Are they, because I mean, it's hard skills is very binary, very simple. If you touch that, you're gonna get electrocuted. No problem. Soft skills is a billion series of grays, right? And it is much more that's why it's soft. It's hard to measure. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Have you seen like measurable and like behavioral shifts because of this? And if so, what have been the greatest behavioral shifts that you've seen or been able to measure with this, other than oh, your heart rate ran up? Great. How is that actually applied in the real world scenarios? And have you seen effective change?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the measurement, we're still waiting for our clients to feed back. They've had it deployed for a year or so and they've been using it in various elements. But as you say, it is quite grey. And one of the pieces of training that we did was actually hard skills, but it's actually soft skills, because it was for maintenance crew managers. And it was about raising the empathy of the managers of their crews, and not them not doing making the crews do so many tasks a day, so they weren't, rushing on the job. When the crews came to them requesting replacement PPE, etc., understanding the importance of, not worn out PPE, so it's not snapping and they're not falling from a great height, as part of sort of like a work safe, home safe aspect. Mm-hmm. But these things are so, it's really hard. I mean, they've seen, less fatal incidents happening on the job, but they can't tie that exactly 100% to, 29% of these, is a result of, doing VR training.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's getting those measurable outcomes. I mean, PwC has done a big report with another VR training company in soft skills. But a lot of the outcomes were more around learner acceptance of the training rather than actual specific outcomes of the training. So it's more like 29% or 80 whatever percent of learners would use VR again or felt more comfortable in such a scenario if it happened in the real world. It's the same, we're looking at DE&I training, sort of diversity, equality and inclusion, but we're creating an experience which is a discussion piece rather than something that you create or something you experience, and at the end, after an assessment, it goes, congratulations, you are only 29% racist, or something quite so specific like that.
Yeah.
It's more about making just people be aware and think of those scenarios and how they treat other people. But yeah, those quantifiable metrics is one of the key areas where VR really struggles at the moment, because they're either not being shared publicly or they aren't being done across a big enough scale to be really meaningful beyond a study group of 40, 50 people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, there's a reason why hard skills have been done to death. It's because it's very straightforward. You grab a nail, you hit the hammer and the ball, your job done, right? And that's why I'm really curious with the soft skills training. It's a super difficult, hard to measure. Show me my bottom line. How does this make me more money? Where's my but the challenge is that it is there, but how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? When you're working with a client and you're sitting down with them and they want to do soft skills, how do you get clear on the outcomes that you want to measure? Because really, as any development studio, you come in and go, great, what's your problem? How are we going to measure the outcome? This is what we're going to do. Ready, set, go. So how do you work with your clients to define outcome measurements for soft skills?
Well, a lot of it is more about how many people they get through. So they know in a traditional form, it takes X number of sessions over Y length of time to get 200 employees through this training course. So one of our big finance clients, straight away on their first experience that we built after a prototype, they were able to understand that after they'd paid the cost of the creation, by running it so many times a week with so many headsets and so many sessions, that they had actually, saved £275,000 or something over the first year. So financial savings in that regard, in terms of efficiencies of training, are fairly straightforward, and you can work that out. But then a lot of it comes down to the sort of financial efficiencies that you're enabling for other departments or other aspects of the company, which you can't necessarily put a price on. But if you look at waste management, for example, pretty low budgets for training, but pretty high budgets for insurance in case there's any injury. But those two budgets are entirely separate, and they can't really be correlated to one another. But then also, it's more about saving saving effort in the future, where one of our products, well, is a tool, Skill Shield, is all about. We take a cast from the VR headset, combined with a video feed of the person doing the training, and create like a learner record, but it then becomes this irrefutable video record of them doing the training. Because there's issues in construction where people pay their buddies to go and do the training for them, and then they go on site untrained. And then if an on-site incident occurs, their defense in court was like, well, you have no evidence that this is Barry actually doing the training, or he's actually certified. So this creates that irrefutable video evidence that's saying, well, look, here's a video of Barry in 2021. Here's the training. Here's his assessment. This is him. This is the photo video of him actually doing it.
That is such like the not epitome, but like the basis of one of the banes of humanity's problems is someone doesn't do the work, and then they get injured from it, and so then they go and try and sue other people, and they go prove that I didn't do my thing. Like it's a very interesting, and so it's like, look, it makes a ton of sense. You're recording them so they can see it, and then you can go back and go, no, you did this thing, and so it's a verifiable record. But to hear people don't do the training, they get injured, and then they go and sue people, and they say, prove that I didn't do the training, or prove that I did the training. It's I could see humans. Interesting. Okay, so shifting away from that, what excites you about the future of these headsets coming out? The new headset that you can't talk about so much, the new technologies coming in, the blending with other things. What are all these things together really? What about this future of training and work excites you?
Well, I mean, the main thing that excites me, we see the biggest adoption happening in the workplace. So, the number of times that we go into an organization either to, do the final deployment of whatever it is we've been building, or we go for a discovery workshop and meet them for the first time and introduce them to the possibilities of immersive tech. And you're there and you're showing them training content, and they're like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is the best thing ever. And they're like straight on their phones, going, I can get one of these for home, right? And they're buying a headset from Target or Walmart or Argos, etc. And they've tried a very serious experience, but you sort of say, well, there's other things you can do with it. Yes, you can play games, but there's also Google Earth and Google Street View and nature treks and meditation and tilt brush and all these creative experiences. And it's the thing that excites me is when people stop. A lot of organizations sell a headset with an app on it, and the end user or the end organization is kind of stuck into this system where we have bought a headset for one purpose, and we can't do anything else with it. And it's like, no, it's so much more than that. It's just a tool within this new tool set of new ways of, a new medium, new ways of communicating, and new ways of telling stories. I'm excited for more and more people to have that experience of what VR can do. So they go and find other things that can be done with it. And that adoption will grow. And I'm excited for the day when I can just post a thing on Facebook or Twitter and say, hey, this thing's just come out. And, my grandma would be like, awesome. I'm going to go and buy it for my headset. My grandma's pretty hardcore. I've got photos of her. She's tried DK1, DK2, Gear VR, CV1, Quest, all the stuff. And whenever she comes over, she's like, have you got that thing where I can punch the sharks? And it's like, yep, sure. And I put her on. But yeah, the exciting thing is that we're getting to the stage sort of just beyond that early adopter, sort of jumping the chasm into the late adopter, where people were buying it at home, and we're seeing it on TV, we're seeing it in adverts, we're seeing it in game shows. It's not just this weird, dark sci-fi dystopian hardware nerdy niche that it has been for so long.
100%, man. No, it makes sense. I love that your grandma's your canary in the coal mine. And yeah, keep trying. Good grandma, great. And you're right. It's like lights going on in the city at night, right? They're all starting to turn on, right? And now it's starting to be like the time where like most of these lights are turning on, where people have tried the headsets, and now it's good enough to where, I mean, this we did like 5 years ago. You show someone a giant Vive headset with a $3,000 PC and all that fun stuff. They're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But now with the headset, we're like, I can buy this on Amazon, like, and then you just see them go into whoop, and they buy it, and it's just out the gate, which is awesome. What is there anything else that you'd like to let people know about before you can tell people how to get a hold of you?
I mean, I just say it to everyone, it is a new medium, and I encourage everyone from all backgrounds to get involved and build and explore and experiment. We can only make this successful if there is a diverse and inclusive range of content made by a diverse and inclusive range of people. Let's not let this be another tech run by people like myself, and let's make it the beautiful thing that it can be. Is pretty much always my closing gambit.
Come in, join the party. The water's warm. Awesome. And if people want to find more about you and what you do, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, the company is Make Real, and we're generally Make Real VR, all one word, at Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. I myself, I'm VR_Sam on Twitter, and allegedly, 2017 anyway, that was the last time any of the big data companies last really cared about VR hashtags, but I'm 12th most influential person in the world, apparently. But I've written a lot of over 350 articles and blog posts and interviews and whatnot about VR over the past 8 years. So there's quite a sort of history to go back through there.
There's some you're compiling a book there of information. So that's beautiful. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for putting out the content and putting out the message. And I will see you in the virtual landscape. So take care, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon. All right. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on the other